The station lights dimmed at 2,300 hours, plunging the corridors of Haven's Reach into a half-lit glow that mimicked night. For most of the alien delegates living aboard the station, that meant retreating into their chambers, sealing doors, and enjoying privacy after long negotiations. For me, though, it meant the same routine as always: filing reports, double-checking oxygen recyclers, and making sure the humans aboard didn't accidentally start another diplomatic incident. I had been stationed on Haven's Reach for 3 months. The station floated on the edge of neutral space, a shining hub where humans and aliens of half a dozen species gathered to test the possibility of peace. Some still distrusted us. To them, humanity was the new, unpredictable power in the galaxy, rising fast and loud. But others seemed fascinated by us. One in particular. Her name was Solari. She belonged to the Arvani, a species of tall, silver-skinned beings with eyes that shimmered faintly in the dark. They were known for grace, intelligence, and strict codes of propriety. Among her people, touching another without permission was unthinkable. Emotions were worn in private, never shared freely. And yet, Solari had taken an interest in me from the moment I was introduced as the human liaison. First, it was just conversation. She would linger after meetings, asking questions. Why do humans laugh so much? Why do we risk ourselves for strangers? Why do we tell stories of love and sacrifice instead of power and dominance? Every answer I gave seemed to draw her closer, until her curiosity was less political and more personal. That night I was lying on my bunk, boots half off, eyes heavy with exhaustion, when the sound of my door opening jolted me upright. No one just entered private quarters without permission. My hand instinctively reached for the emergency baton mounted by the bed. And then I saw her. Solari stood in the doorway, her silver skin reflecting the dim lights, her long cloak trailing behind her. She looked nothing like the pristine delegate she usually presented to the council. Her hair was loose, falling over her shoulders, and there was something fragile in her glowing eyes. "Human," she whispered softly, almost trembling. "Can I sleep next to you tonight?" Beginning, the request. I blinked, unsure if fatigue was making me hallucinate. Aliens did not sleep in others' chambers. They barely even acknowledged the act of sleeping, considering it a private vulnerability. "Solari," I managed, keeping my voice low. "Do you have any idea what you're asking?" Her gaze lowered, her hands curling at her sides. "I know. It is forbidden. Unthinkable, perhaps. But I cannot stay in my room. The silence presses against me. The eyes of my people weigh heavy. And you, human, you carry warmth. I need that warmth tonight." There was a raw honesty in her tone that shook me. "Close the door," I whispered, and she obeyed instantly, gliding across the small cabin until she stood barely a foot from me. She wasn't shivering, not physically. The Arvani regulated their body temperature far better than humans. But the tremor in her voice and the faint quiver in her stance told me she was unsettled. I hesitated. I could have reported her intrusion. I could have reminded her of the delicate political balances at play. But instead I shifted on the bed and nodded. "All right. But only because you look like you're about to collapse." For the first time since I'd met her, Solari smiled. It wasn't the polite curve of lips she gave in council sessions. It was smaller, softer, vulnerable. She lay down carefully beside me, leaving just enough space between us that her people's strict rules weren't fully broken. But her presence was overwhelming. The faint glow of her skin illuminated the cabin. Her eyes fluttered closed, but her voice lingered. "Your heartbeat," she whispered, as though confessing a secret. "It is calming." And then she drifted into sleep. I didn't sleep for a long while. Not because I was uncomfortable, but because I realized the universe had just shifted in that small room. The consequences. The next morning, Solari was gone. My quarters looked untouched, as though she'd never entered. If not for the faint warmth still lingering on the sheets, I might have convinced myself it was a dream. But she avoided me in the council chamber that day. Her eyes flicked past me when she spoke, her voice steadier than usual, her poise perfect. To anyone else, she was the flawless Arvani diplomat. To me, she was the woman who had whispered beside my bed. Days passed. She did not return. And yet, when we crossed paths in the corridors, her gaze lingered just a fraction longer than it should have. Her voice softened when she addressed me. The others noticed too, though they misinterpreted it. The Arvani delegate favors the human liaison. One of the Korek ambassadors grumbled over drinks. Strange creatures, those Arvani. Always pretending to be distant, and yet she looks at you like you hold a star in your hands. Rumors spread quickly on Haven's Reach. Some whispered that humanity had won the loyalty of the Arvani. Others suspected secret deals. But no one guessed the truth, that a single night's quiet trust had woven an invisible thread between two people from worlds apart. Then came the crisis. A trade dispute erupted between the Arvani and the Korek, nearly collapsing months of peace talks. Tensions flared in the council chamber. Voices raised, accusations hurled. The Korek, towering reptilian warriors, threatened to pull their fleets from negotiations. If they did, war would be inevitable. And in the center of it all was Solari, calm but strained, her people demanding firmness. She was supposed to denounce the Korek. Instead, her eyes flicked to me. Perhaps, she said carefully, the human liaison may offer perspective. His people are skilled at compromise. All eyes turned to me. My pulse thundered. I had not been briefed for this. But Solari's gaze held mine, steady, trusting. I understood then, she wasn't just asking for diplomacy. She was asking me to step into the fire with her. I spoke carefully, weaving words of fairness, reminding both sides of what was at stake, offering small concessions that neither side wanted but both could live with. The chamber erupted in debate, but slowly, grudgingly, the shouting dimmed. A fragile agreement was signed. Afterwards, as the delegates dispersed, Solari lingered. For the first time in days, she approached me directly. You risked much, human, she said quietly. Your people will blame you if the compromise fails. Wouldn't be the first time, I said with a faint grin. Her lips curved, almost but not quite a smile. And yet you did it. For me. For peace, I corrected softly. But we both knew the truth lay somewhere between. That night she came again. No words this time. Just the sound of my door opening, her soft footsteps crossing the floor, and then the weight of her presence settling beside me. This time she didn't leave space between us, ending the choice. Weeks passed. Nights blurred into days, filled with fragile negotiations and stolen moments. Solari would come to my quarters unannounced, sometimes only to sit in silence, sometimes to ask questions that reached deeper than politics. Why do humans love so fiercely? She asked once. Because we know how short life can be, I answered. Why do you laugh, even in fear? Because it's how we tell the universe it hasn't beaten us yet.